that any leader, and I won't be there, I know you trying to be careful, I won't be careful because I hate to be politically correct. I would rather say it the way it is, that any leader, regardless of how sweet the words they use, should be answerable to the people. I believe in servant leadership. And anybody that governs with a gun is an oppressor. How else are people going to check him? How are they going to question him? You know, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts, absolutely. That is how Museveni began. That is how all these other, that's how Robert Mugabe began. I was named after Robert Mugabe, you know, because he was a great revolutionary. By the time I was born, by the time he passed away, he was a despised tyrant. Now I can imagine how it's going to be 5, 10, 20 years from now in Burkina Faso. I mean, Burkina Faso produced Traore. That means there are millions of Traores in Burkina Faso. Let them be inspired by him, but let him set a good precedent where leaders are questioned by the people, are answerable to the people, and are governing according to the interests of the people. But most importantly, leaders should be subjected to the interests of the people so that people can vote you in and vote you out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. There's a lot there in what you said. I guess I just want to ask one follow-up question, which is, you know, I think I've noticed, I don't know if you've also noticed, in Kampala, in lots of parts of Uganda actually, nowadays, you know, I'm always watching what people put on like matatus, like the images they put on matatus. Nowadays you see a lot of images of like Idi Amin, Gaddafi on matatus, Mugabe even, you know, I saw a duka also named after Mugabe. So why do you think people are now kind of reevaluating or finding something, interesting or inspiring in these figures who we look at as, you know, this problematic thing from the past or something?
Well, that's an interesting one. You see, I grew up, I was not born in the days of Idi Amin, but I know he was a brutal dictator, also I'm told. However, I also know that many of the roads and many hospitals and schools were built by Idi Amin. I also know that under Idi Amin, there was a crackdown on corruption. You cannot find Idi Amin's son or daughter or grandchild as a tycoon. I know that Uganda House here in New York was bought for Uganda by Idi Amin and all that. That is not in any way to wrap away the brutality that he meted on Ugandans. But I believe that people tend to romanticize the dictators of yesteryears because the current dictators are making the former dictators look like angels. I mean, Museveni is making Idi Amin look like an angel. Idi Amin ruled over Uganda for only 8 years. For all the wrongs that he did, Idi Amin was uneducated. Idi Amin did that for 8 years. Museveni has killed Ugandans for 40 years and counting. There are, in my view, and I could be wrong, there are productive dictators and there are failed dictators. Museveni is a failed dictator because besides the brutality, the corruption is at levels it has never been before. It has only been destruction. So, and this is to warn us, if I or anybody from your generation was to become president and you behave like Museveni or worse, you make him look like an angel. So that should teach us. I don't know if I'm...
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know, I mean, I always find it so strange. But I guess I want to ask another question related to something that you talked about, which is the Red Beret. I guess I'm curious to know, you know, what place you think aesthetics have in political struggle, specifically in Africa, because, you know, from the very beginning, People Power and Loop has been very, I think, brilliant in how it uses aesthetics, how you've been able to use the color red, the formations, the different ways that you've been able to use social media as well to project certain images and to use these references or aesthetics of like other revolutionary struggles, other popular struggles to animate your movement. So I'm curious to, and also of course music, right?
Mm-hmm.
Music being the other big one. So I'm curious to know how you think about the relationship between aesthetics and politics in contemporary African politics and what role aesthetics has in that, yeah.
Thank you. I'm an artist. Did you tell them I'm a musician? A good one. I'm an artist, and maybe that's where art comes in handy. We read history and we pick the things that inspire us in history. Of course, many people have used this red beret. They have had their mistakes, but there have been great things about them. People like Che Guevara, selflessness and all that. People like Thomas Sankara. Unfortunately, or fortunately, he did live so long, so we only know the good things. Many times I imagine if Jesus Christ lived up to 75. So we are able to pick the good things and the artistic things from that. Just like music played a huge role in the struggles, during the days of slavery, during the days of colonialism, during the days of fighting against apartheid, fighting against dictatorships. And today, the same way aesthetics do the same. Now we use this red beret and the style in which we confront the dictatorship. We are non-violent militants. That's why you hear us calling ourselves foot soldiers. We are soldiers, non-violent soldiers. We are fighting non-violently. And the way we dress, the way we carry ourselves, the way we speak communicates as we confront what is wrong. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I think it's one of the most beautiful things about your movement and about our movement is how much great music we have from it. My mom, her favorite song of yours is Charenga, which everyone should listen to if they have time. It's really good. So okay, I'll just ask some questions from the audience. They submitted some questions in advance, and then we can move into question and answer because I'm sure many of you have your own questions. So, okay, one question from the audience is basically, how can the international community outside of Uganda contribute to the Ugandan struggle? What can they do besides amplifying your message and advocacy? So what kind of new pressure can be applied on the regime, basically, from people who are sympathizers and people who are outside of the country? And I'd be interested to know, in light especially of the new proposed national sovereignty bill, what you think is still possible.
Yeah, the international community, how can they contribute to our freedom struggle? By not contributing to our oppression. You see, dictatorships, all the way from history, have always gotten their strength from the international community. Today, for decades, Museveni has been getting a lot of money. In the recent years, Museveni was getting up to $1 billion from the US government in terms of in form of military cooperation and others from the US. But this very money has always been the money that is used to subjugate us. 2018, I had my drive. I was supposed to be a dead man. They shot at my car and killed my driver. They used an American gun. So what we, and indeed this in many ways has always been turned around on us. For example, when I ran away from death, from back home, I did not go to Kenya or Tanzania, Sudan or any country nearby because the dictator in Uganda has his long hand stretched into all these countries. I ended up in America. Unfortunately, the regime propagandists always pulled out their Pan-African card and say, oh, how can you run to the land of the colonialists? How can you go run to the land of imperialists? You're an agent of the imperialists. And yet, in reality, they are the agents of the West. So, what we ask of the international community is to stand by the values that they profess, is to not be the support system for the oppression, is to hold the regime in Uganda and other oppressive regimes in Africa and the world to the same standards of other democracies. To know that if what the dictatorship in Uganda is unacceptable according to their values, then they should not be funding it. They have laws that, like the Global Magnitsky, that they can evoke, that they've evoked elsewhere. When Taylor did what Museveni did, he was sanctioned. When Mugabe did what Museveni is doing, he was sanctioned. And all other countries. Why then are they not sanctioning Museveni? They should not put diplomacy above democracy. They should not put business above values, you know. We can relate in terms of trade and all this. If they want our minerals, if they want our wealth, it can be on a moral ground and not in exchange of keeping a dictatorship in power. That has always been our ask. That is our ask to today. I mean, Dr. Besigye is in prison. He shouldn't be in prison. You know, there should be questions like that. We have thousands of political prisoners in prison without a crime. Many people are missing. Today, as we speak, the wife of my personal political assistant was abducted and kept in Muhozi. Muhozi, for information, is a son of General Museveni, who is the president of Uganda and is the chief of defense forces. He will pick anybody's wife from their home and keep him under his basement for as long as he wants. He kept the wife of my personal assistant for 37 days. There's a young lady who's a TikToker called Blue Tick. Up to now, she was picked up and she's being kept in his basement. He does all this and gets away with it. And the following day, or days later, he's standing in an official picture with either an ambassador from a renowned democracy or a diplomat. I think that's wrong. I think America and the developed world should not be partners in crime with dictators like Museveni. That is our ask. That is what they can do. We are not asking them to come and save us. We're asking them to stop sponsoring our operation and to stop being part of our pain. Or else we see them as partners in crime. Now to the American citizens and citizens of the world, all we ask of them is to keep attention. We appreciate the attention that they give to the world, the attention that they give to Ukraine. I personally went to Ukraine, to see what's happening there. The same attention they give to Ukraine, they should give to Congo. They should give to Uganda. They should give to Sudan. More people are killed in Congo than in Ukraine and Gaza combined. So they should give us attention. They should. I saw people here, our brothers and sisters, the black people in America, with the campaign Black Lives Matter. I wish they would also say African Lives Matter, because I think we matter too. Yeah. So give us your attention. And indeed, that's what brings us here, to seek your attention, to be able to highlight our plight. And if you permit me, I'll also use this opportunity to challenge you, the young people. I mean, Columbia University is an amazing university. For me, from what I've read, I know all these great leaders in Africa and the world have come here. The Kwame Nkrumahs, the Obotes, the Nyereres and others. They've been here. You are the Nyereres of today. You are the Nkrumahs of today. You are our hope. So rise to the occasion. There's a reason why God, if you believe in him or her, there's a reason why God picked you up to bring you here. If you don't utilize that for the benefit of the millions of us that are home, you will be a loss. Thank you.
Thank you. That so I just have one more question from from here, and then we can move on to questions and answers. So, this is the question that I guess is a bit more speculative. It's not necessarily about how we can handle things now, but the question is, how do you plan to handle relationships with international powers in the future, right? So what kind of relationship can Uganda and African countries build with the United States, with the global north, on more equitable terms that don't perpetuate these dictatorships in our countries? Right? How do we renegotiate that relationship with the global north, with international powers?
It will be business, not aid. Yeah, simple as that.
Yeah.
We'll be relating like business partners, like equals. Yeah.
Right. That's great. Okay. Well, very short. So, okay, I guess we can now open to questions and answers. Yeah, I think we can. We have a lot of time, so we can go one for one. Did you have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, I do have a question. I mean, just to follow up on the question of Africa or global north and global south relationships. I mean, it's no mystery that the U.S. has had, and U.S. foreign policy, especially in Africa, has been catastrophic. I mean, they give a lot of money to dictators. They fund a lot of horrible wars. They don't give attention when they need to. So I think my question is I mean, if we talk about Thomas Sankara, we talk about Patrice Lumumba, and the CIA killed Lumumba, who's a great man and a great leader. Do you think it's simple as just business transitioning from aid to business because they have such indebted roots or colonial roots that is very much propped over by the ideas of racial superiority? How do we in the global south try to, what are the concrete steps we can take, or the leaders can take, to truly come on equal terms and to approach this as you say, as business instead of aid? Because it seems like a lot of people have tried it, and a lot of people have been either killed or pushed apart by the strong men who act as proxies for imperial interests.
Thank you. That sounds like a pessimist question, a scared question. Man, so many people have tried it and they've been stopped or killed. How is it going to happen? You just don't stop. Many people rose up again. Slavery took 400 years. In those 400 years, many people kept rising and got killed and got stopped until eventually it got stopped. Mandela gave us one beautiful quote: "It always seems impossible until it's done." My view, though, is to create as many people as possible, as many mindsets, people that believe in the same thing as possible, the re-education, as many as possible. One Bobi Wine cannot do it. One Kizza Besigye can't do it. Let us create as many Besigyes as possible, as many Bobi Wines as possible. There will be unstoppable. The problem is that back home in Uganda, and largely in Africa, there's always been this Superman syndrome, this liberator syndrome. When one person comes and you believe in that one person, when that one person is corrupted and compromised, it is the end of the story. But if there are many Bobi Wines, if this Bobi Wine before you is compromised or corrupted, the others are going to hold him accountable or kick him the hell out. You know, if there are many of us that will translate into transformation. Yes, when you fight dictatorship fights back. When you fight neocolonialism fights back. Every evil that you fight, it will fight back. Just prepare a big enough army. That's why I believe in re-educating a population. When that population believes in something, then it will be embedded. There are so many people that dared to, back home we were colonized for a very long time. And many rose and they were stopped until there were so many to be stopped. And that's how it changed. It might take time, but if we don't stop and if we take the right strategy, in my view, is changing the mindset of the people so that so many of us are pointing in the same direction. that will change. That's my thinking.
Great.
Hi, thank you. It's a big honor, and I've also written a paper on you. So my question is, we focus a lot on how you get power, but for me, I want to think about the day after because I have confidence in you. And we've seen a lot of youth revolutions around the world, around Africa, Sudan, Senegal, Tunisia, South Africa, but a lot of them have then later been hijacked. Or even the leaders then turning back and betraying the people who they rose up for at the start. And when we look at how Museveni has kept power, he's done it through a big tent approach that then became small tent, using carrots and sticks. And we see that even if you do manage to win the presidency, and there's still a lot of centers of power that remain. So we have, your economic elites, patronage networks, you have the military, you have global neoliberalism, and even, Muhoozi, you have like ethnic fault lines that people like Muhoozi have. He tweeted once, he kept you in his basement to teach you like Banyakole. So how do you ensure that you have that sort of structures within your movement and in the future that prevent any transformation from being hijacked and even preventing maybe yourself from turning bad, I guess, because not all these people start out as monsters, as you pointed out. Mm-hmm. So what happened down the line, and how do we make sure that doesn't happen?
I like that question. How do we make sure it doesn't happen? And I like you saying, how do we, not how do I? Because I'm not asking you to believe in me. I'm a human being. And I've seen good people go bad. When Museveni was my age, man, he was eloquent. Much more. He was saying the same things like I'm saying, only more eloquent. So I'm not here to promise you that I am going to be the best leader that there is. No. I can only tell you that it is the people that, and those people, they're not all going to come in a group and hold you accountable, but the institutions, if we empower them. So we don't believe in empowering an individual. We believe in empowering institutions because institutions will outlive human greed and human temptation. And that, for us, in our movement, the People Power Movement, and indeed the National Unity Platform, the party that I lead, that is what we believe in. We believe in institutionalization. I am accountable to the people that I lead, just like they are accountable to me. We are accountable to each other.
But also, we want to empower people to hold us accountable. I believe that's the only way we can get there.
But most importantly, to also encourage people, especially you, the young people, to take charge of this and to get involved. Because, yes, I'm here, not because I'm the most educated. And if it was not for the frustration and the anger, maybe I would only come to Columbia University to sing music to you and not to talk politics to you, But here I am. So we should encourage the young people, especially the ones that have been lucky to get the education and the exposure that you get, to get involved. And when we get involved, then we get to hold our leaders accountable to do the right thing, but not to leave one person to choose. Like I said, leaders don't do the right thing because they are so good-hearted. They do the right thing because they are held accountable and because they know there are consequences to doing the bad thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. I had a question with regards to what do you see the role of, continental bodies such as the African Union, East African Community, as well as SADC, with regards to promoting greater accountability for, democracy within the continent. Because I think right now, we're at a difficult moment where at least the status of democracy across East Africa as well as the continent in general is looking relatively tentative. And what do you think can be done, at least at an institutional level, as well as as us for us as Africans to improve the status of democracy?
Man, in my culture, I'm in Uganda, from central Uganda. In my culture, we are supposed to speak good of home when we are away from home. But again, my big mouth always forces me to speak the damn truth. Now, the regional and continental bodies, there's a difference between what they should be doing and what they're actually doing. These are bodies that we should be reporting to. These are bodies that are supposed to be the remedy to the mess. Unfortunately, they have been reduced to clubs, to presidents' clubs. Take, for example, the East African community. What democracy is going to be discussed between Museveni and Ruto and Uhuru, with all due respect, you know, these are clubs now, they're in my view, they're reduced to clubs of protecting each other's power. No wonder Ugandan security will illegally cross into Kenya under the watch of Kenyan security, abduct Dr. Kiza Besigye, put him in a car boot, and drive him across the border illegally against international law. And they will not only be inactive, they will not only do nothing, but they will also say nothing. I mean, elections have been rigged, and you know, all that has been swept under the carpet by regional bodies that, like the East African Community and the African Union. You know, look how much trouble is going on in South Africa. I am yet to hear a word from the African Union. In many ways, the people of East Africa and largely Africa are on their own. Maybe this calls for the rise of a new generation to do different. But as of now, the East African community is nothing what its name, and so is the African Union.
Yeah, no, and I mean, just to highlight what you're saying, I mean, after the elections in Tanzania, many people said actually that Ugandan security was involved in the violence that took place in Tanzania. In their election, but after the election, you know, Museveni was the first one to go show up and congratulate President Suluhu and, you know, to normalize what had just happened. I remember seeing a tweet at some point saying, like, you know, these presidents are just in a group chat copying each other or something. Which, I mean, it seems true. Like, even in Tanzania, if something like that could happen in Tanzania, I mean, everyone was shocked. Other questions?
Thank you so much for being here. I'm really appreciate this. I'm Kenyan. So in 2024, we have the finance bill protest, like what was like by Gen Z. And I'm wondering, like, what do you make of that protest? Because it was like, oh, you know, partyless, we have no leader. Like, I'm wondering, like, what do you think of that, and what can be done in the future to hold our leaders accountable?
Thank you. Those young people of Kenya are such an inspiration. That is the way to go. And I would encourage all the young people of East Africa and indeed the world to emulate that. To be tribeless, to be partyless, and to be religionless, but to look at the truth, to look at what serves everybody, what makes everybody equal, and go for that. For so many, I mean, and I'm calling upon young people to be partyless. I'm a leader of a political party, but I always tell the young people of Uganda and indeed East Africa and Africa not to be boxed to their political parties, but to follow what is right and do that. At least they were able to push back against that bill, and it was thrown out. Today, and Anselm talked about it, today there's a new bill in Uganda. I've been told by many leaders that it was introduced after I escaped out of Uganda, and the regime knew that once I'm out of Uganda, my big mouth is going to cost them. And therefore, they are bringing a law that declares every Ugandan that walks out of Uganda a foreigner. Oh yeah. It's that shocking, but that's exactly what's happening in Uganda. And to forbid any sending of money back home without going through a minister. So if you are Ugandan and you want to send your sick relative money to go to hospital, you have to get permission from the minister. Why? Because they fear that those that are supporting the opposition are going to be sending money back home. For anybody that leaves Uganda is a foreigner, even if you hold a Ugandan passport and you left last week. And anybody that you send money back home is regarded an agent of a foreigner. And if you receive money without the permission of the minister, you risk going to jail for 20 years or paying a fine of 2 billion shillings. 2 billion shillings, that's, how much is 2 billion shillings?
$100,000?
No, much more than that, yeah.
400,000.
Yeah, thereabout. So, that, in a way, is ruled by law. But for the young people to be able to stop that, they should be able to push back. Like I said earlier on, it's risky, but sometimes the solution is in the risk.
Yeah, and I mean, these laws have histories, right? Like, these laws have been around in places like Russia for a long time. There's like an authoritarian playbook that our governments are really good at trying to emulate. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Joe. I'm Ugandan. Let me start by saying, first of all, my mother loves you.
Send out my love too.
As much as she loves Best, yeah. Yeah, she watches the news every day and she's always coordinated about what's going on. And my question is with regards to how you transition to the next chapter. So what keeps her up at night, what really troubles her, is the threat of violence. So she wants to transition from the government we have right now, but her fear is that to do that, there will have to be violence. And I think what happened in the 70s and the 80s should not be at that time. So there's a sense in that she's sort of fine with the status quo, as long as, you know, it doesn't lead to thousands of people dying. So how do we sort of address that issue that affects, you know, most of minds of many Ugandans, in that they want a better life, but they're not paying a terrible cost. I think what's happening in Libya or Sudan sort of get to that point. So how do you bridge that gap?
Thank you. That's interesting. And indeed, it is the threat of violence that has in many ways kept us where we are. Back in Uganda, especially with the older generation, Museveni and his people have more or less made it clear that if you don't vote for me, there will be war. In northern Uganda, we go campaign and say, Bobi, we support you. But when we vote for you, there will be war. And you ask them, where is the war going to come from? Say, Museveni will fight. This is a person that started a war in 1980, and it consumed 500,000 people. The sacrifice was given, and it was supposed to be the end of the cycle of violence. But for him to always threaten people with violence if he's voted out, that is what has kept our people boxed down. And indeed, Mama says it, that, you see now, let us just sit down and leave the man, because if we vote him out, he will fight. That's intimidation. I'll tell you that before I started dressing like this and trying to speak straight English, I was a bad boy from the ghetto. And I know a thing or two about violence. And the generation that I lead is young, is hungry, and angry. We have very little to lose but everything to gain. And we are very capable of violence. But we chose non-violence because we know historically that violence has only bred violence. It only creates a vicious circle of violence. It breeds this sense of entitlement. Oh, we earned it, we spilled our blood, so you can't tell us that. I mean, we've learned that from the Museveni generation. That's why we are non-violent. But unfortunately, regardless of how non-violent we've been met with extreme violence, abductions, killings, and everything. We have preached non-violence all through the campaign. But on the day of election, I was raided. I was put under house arrest. Just less than 24 hours after the election, I was raided and I was forced out of my country. So while we believe in non-violence, we are slowly getting to a level where I will not be able to control the young people that want to free themselves by any means necessary. So the best way to avoid this violence is to have Museveni go peacefully. As a matter of fact, there are many people who are beginning to persuade me to look more the Malcolm X way and say sometimes you have to pick up a gun to put down a gun. That is not what I'm encouraging, but I didn't say I'm discouraging it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think also just on this question of violence, I have a lot of friends who say similar things, like what will happen, like maybe we'll be brought back into a war. But I took a trip to Kidepo recently. These areas in the north were really only pacified very recently. People have memories of like violence and fighting that was extremely traumatic, way beyond into like the NRM period. So the question is really peace for whom, right? This is a country that never dispensed with violence, never dispensed with warfare. People are still fighting in lots of parts of Uganda. Uganda's actively engaged in like at least 4 different wars at any given time. So yeah, I saw him. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So you very aptly recognize that the U.S. is no longer really pushing forward and in the world as it maybe used to be, especially in the current administration. Of course, there are also other powers getting involved in Uganda. The Chinese have launched some projects with the Museveni government under the Belt and Road Initiative. So I was just wondering, what is your general view on Chinese involvement? Obviously there's many downsides, and how would you approach these projects if one day, if everything goes well, you can assume your rightful place?
Thank you. As a citizen, I welcome any kind of development. And as a leader, when I'm president, and you notice I say when, not if. When I'm president, I will welcome all kind of moral development. Of course, I differ from Museveni. Museveni has dealt so much with the Chinese and Russians because their collaboration does not come with conditions like the US and the European collaboration used to be. It has no strings of democracy and human rights attached. For them, it is business. They don't care how you treat your people. Unfortunately, the US and likely Europe are seeming to go the China way now. Say, okay, now China is taking business from us. Maybe we should abandon the values and just deal with the dictator the way the Chinese. While that is beneficial in the short run, in the long run, it's very dangerous because they are dealing with an individual and not the people of Uganda. And when we, the people of Uganda, finally free ourselves, we are going to know who our real friends are and we'll make the right decisions. then. I don't know if I answer you in a way.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, so 2 hands here.
Good evening, and thank you for being here. I'm Ugandan myself. I'm from the north, from Arua specifically. And among my friend groups and in the chat, there's 2 sentiments that are echoed. The first is that some people don't think you're serious about really being a political candidate, that because you spend more time outside and it feels like you're pushing more Bobi Wine the artist and going to award shows. I don't believe it, I'm just sharing. As opposed to being the presidential candidate, that's serious. The second question, if you'll allow, is that your personal bodyguard Eddie, who's currently being treated like a terrorist, was arrested in his sweater. What's your plan to help him, especially if you're spending more time out of the country, allegedly, instead of being home?
Thank you. It's interesting. Yeah, for the record, I'm an artist and a good one. In fact, I'm a star. That is supposed to be an advantage, not a disadvantage. You know, it has given me an edge over other politicians. And of course, they're going to fight it, they're going to try to ridicule it, they're going to try to make me sound or seem unserious. Am I serious about being president? Hell yeah! I've run and I've won the presidency twice. You can't be more serious than that. I spend more time outside Uganda than in Uganda. I also want to make it clear that I'm not here voluntarily. I'm here because I ran to exile, although many times I say it, albeit rather in denial that I'm not in exile. But technically I am, because I ran to save my life. Now, those that say that they resemble somebody who's going to beat you and say you cry so loud. I'm not in my country because I want to be alive some more. I want to postpone my execution. Like you are aware, the opposition leader that inspired us, Dr. Kizza Besigye, is in prison, not because he committed a crime, but because he's feared. That's why he's in prison. If I was in my country, I would either be dead or in prison or somewhere being tortured. Now nobody enjoys being tortured. And in any case, I think I serve the struggle more when I am here advancing the struggle than sleeping somewhere in a torture chamber or in a prison or in a grave. So that's again to assert that I'm serious. I've spent more, I was on a campaign trail for 112 days. For all those 112 days of campaign, no other presidential candidate campaigned half the days. But I was on the campaign trail for all those days. That is another mark of seriousness. So I am serious. And the people of Uganda are very serious because they voted for me. And given half the chance, they vote for me again. About my bodyguard, who was abducted by the Chief of Defense Forces, put in his basement. We looked for him until he tweeted and said, "Don't look for him, I have him in my basement and I'm teaching him Lunyankole." Now Lunyankole is a language of the tribe where General Museveni and his son come from. And indeed, because he was some handsome guy with a big, nice beard, shaved it off, shaved his hair, tortured him, and put pictures of his naked self on Twitter. That was the Chief of Defense Forces doing that. They tortured him for so many days, and later on, he was presented in a court, limping with missing nails and part of the finger missing, and he was charged for stealing a sweater. Now, and please don't be offended, but I feel mocked when I'm asked what I am planning to do to save him, since I'm always outside the country. This that I'm doing, I'm trying to save not just him, but the thousands of people. At least Eddie is lucky that his name is known by you and the world. But there's so many unknown people that are being tortured, that are in prison with no crime. By doing this, at least I am advancing the plight. Maybe one of you will tweet it, and an influential person will see it. Maybe among the young people or the lecturers in Colombia will pick interest in his case, and that will be the beginning of his salvation. So by being outside the country, I'm advancing his case, I'm advancing the cases of thousands of people in his position. Thank you.
Okay, there are a bunch of hands. I think I saw you first, and then we'll go back to you. Do you want to go first?
My name is Nami Anzi, and my question is like a mix of three questions I have. So if Museveni relinquished power today peacefully, what would you do to optimize and capitalize on the Ugandan industry specifically, since you say that business is like rather than aid? And what policies do you plan to change to execute that plan? And then what no's are you willing to say to that presidential part that does have these advantages if you're a president of Uganda today? What are you willing to sacrifice by saying no to some of their injustice practices right now?
Thank you. Your English seems to be a little fast. Let me just make sure I get your question. Number one, if you could repeat your question, but a little slower.
Three parts, I can say it again. So the first part is, well, Museveni relinquishing power peacefully. What are the changes you want to take right now, specifically in the business realm? What Ugandan industry do you think you want to capitalize initially? And then what no's are you willing to say to the East African coalition of presidents that to not be in that club, as you say? What are you willing to sacrifice?
Thank you very much. The first question was about business.
Yes.
Yeah. How do I hope to make business better in Uganda? Cut down corruption. In the days when we just got independence and 10, 20 years that followed, President Milton Obote reduced our problem to poverty, ignorance, and disease. And he was right. Today, Uganda's problem is square corruption. Corruption in every sector. We lose 10 trillion every year to corruption, according to the Inspector General of Government. So, if we crack down on corruption, things will work better. And of course, that only takes the political will. Because, again, according to the same Inspector General of Government that is employed by the President, she mentioned it that every huge corruption scandal is followed to the doorstep of the President. We have a President that has turned corruption into a currency. He has weaponized it. So if we crack down on corruption, then most things will be functional. And what sacrifice do I hope to give to end to stop making the East African Community Club the lust for power? As soon as I'm president, the first thing I want to do is to make sure I don't stay president. Now, the lust for power has been our problem. It has caused most problems because the leaders that want to stay in power will give up everything to stay in power. They'll give up the morality. They'll accept everything to stay in power. But if one is not lustful for power, then they will do the right thing. Because by doing the right thing, then you're not holding power onto yourself. You're spreading power to where it's supposed to be, in the institutions. Thank you.
Okay. here, and then these two gentlemen back there. Or, okay, go on.
I don't have too much to say because Mr. President, you don't know me, but you know me. I'm one of the survivors. I was from Delaware. I visited last time. I was talking to some of the people they cannot, they thought people were not as a good time. I've been talking to Waiswa for a long time, and I didn't receive my messages until it was jailed and I couldn't get communication with you. I was arrested during the COVID time. I survived it. I will not say, tell you that people helped me because in the what? In the government. But most especially,
I helped you.
a lot. The reason why I don't come in this conference because of the people. I thought this place would be more safer. Talk. Because that time, you know, Blackie was arrested with one of the journalists. You know that person? You came out and say, one of the journalists called so and so is in torture's chamber.
Yeah. You are the guy?
And they were. My messages towards the campaign. I don't know whether I have that program or you see my message through non-core. At the time I send a message, Bobi, you don't need to go around and campaign. You just meet there, give them a song, move away, you don't have time to explain. I don't know whether you've seen that message. And he told me, yeah, he got that message.
But when I sing, they'll say I'm serious. I like to joke. Please go.
Please do this to me. Don't go with security, your security in different places. Everywhere you have people, leave those people away from you. Leave them stay at their places. Because once you go with them, they're going to arrest them. Please don't move with them. I sent that message, but afterwards, I saw that I don't see any people around you, those campaigns, those people that happening. I really appreciate it. Because once I come out from Nigeria, I called Zach. We talked a lot. That my lawyer was killed.
Please ask your question. Maybe we can interact later to give everybody else chance. I'm sorry. Looks like you and I need to have a lengthy conversation.
Yeah, that's why I talk like this. I don't talk too much, but I give you the hint so that you can listen. We'll get time and talk.
Sure.
My lawyer was killed as poison.
Who was that?
My best friend was also dead at temporary. Akim.
Is that Bomeli?
Akim. Vega was a Muslim lawyer.
Yeah.
The leader of Muslim lawyer. You know that in the name become, that's what we say. Me, I'm here at this moment. But people around me were killed. I cannot explain a lot of people who was killed in that process. But myself, I'm the only person I think who survived. Because I went in every chamber, like 5 chambers, torture chambers, and I survived. Your voice helped me a lot. The reason why I was tortured for, I didn't so beaten, they didn't beat me too much because of some of the people I told you. Why they didn't beat me too much. Please, I don't want to think about that because I've seen a lot of things. You people, my sister, if I see someone talking about that boy, I call him boy because he's young to me. You don't know. You never reach that extent. People are suffering. People are suffering. Maybe you know people around you. Those are arrested at this moment. But you don't know what happened there before you come. Okay. Zaki came in another prison. I was somewhere. They told me Zaki there. They released me. You know what I mean? Releasing you from that. For you think Zaki was arrested. Not so. But moving you from that place to come to Zaki's place was like coming from Uganda to New York. I helped Zaki to write that message. It is some that you know this person, the father of Zaki. To know where he is. They noticed that maybe I'm among those people who make an information. People who know where he is.
Joking. They're joking. They don't know himself. Someone saying,
People are going, their country is going to big problem. If you know, if you don't know, you know. For us, we survive because of our parents. Because if my parents are not so close to the government, how? You cannot survive. If you see someone, you can say, Eddie Mutwe in jail, you can see people around. You see Eddie Mutwe coming to the court. That is not a torture. There's people down there. They don't know what it is. Then down the basement, a year, you cannot see the sun. Man, they can take you without light. Down. If you want power, it's not what? Job. You don't know what. I don't want to say much, Bobi. I can say I'm appreciative about what you do.
Thank you, brother. I could see you were getting emotional. I know there are deep stories, deep stories, but don't worry, we're trying to find a solution. So at least we are alive, you are alive, so cheer up. One day everything is gonna be fine.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that story. I mean, personally, I know so many stories like this, and I don't understand how so many people can just go on living their ordinary lives knowing that these things are happening and knowing how much they don't know. I think every Ugandan should feel a terrible burden on their conscience. Anyway, yes, you had a question.
My name is Irina. I'm originally from Belarus.
Oh.
And I know what is the regime.
Yes.
When I read the news about Uganda and what is happening there, I'm having like deja vu. Because we had the same.
Yeah.
So getting back to the idea of violence and non-violence. We used to be non-violent soldiers for many, many years. And Belarus doesn't have real election for 30 years. Every election is fake. So what we got with our peaceful protests. In 2006, protest failed. 2010, protest failed. 2020, we had a huge protest. Many people involved, and we just wanted Lukashenko just go away peacefully, nothing else. we got massacre. Dozen people killed, many people tortured, many people are in jail. We still have many political prisoners. It's kind of last dictatorship in Europe. Shape. So, question is, what is the probability of winning if we will continue just peaceful protest in the future? Maybe we should change something. We should change strategy. We should be more aggressive, more efficient, not just peaceful. Because people lose faith, people lose power, people lose what is the worst, their lives. So what we should do. And last but not least, 3 years ago I visited Uganda. And I made videos, like a movie about my trip in Eastern Africa. I tried to reach your team regarding copyrights because I used your songs in my video. Unfortunately, I didn't get any response, so I just used your songs. I mentioned who is the doctor, Bobi is the singer, but sorry, there are no royalties because this is not a commercial video. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my sister. First of all, I'm glad to meet you. Every time I meet a person from an oppressed country, it's like I've met a brother or sister because we share the same plight. For clarity, my music, and I made it clear that anybody that uses my music for revolutionary purposes and for purposes of benefiting humanity, they are free to use my music. So don't worry, and encourage other people to use my music for the benefit of humanity. That's the least I contribute. And I'm very glad you visited Uganda. Now you asked a very intriguing question. What other strategy? Here in America, there were arguments back in the day between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. While Martin Luther King was advocating for nonviolence, and Malcolm X was saying that it is immoral and indeed criminal to tell people not to fight back. When a murderer comes to your house, you're not going to sweet talk them away. And yes, reading the history of the great Nelson Mandela, he taught us that nonviolence works when the oppressor has a conscience. But when the oppressor has no conscience, nonviolence doesn't work. I mean, we have protested and they've massacred people, young people, babies, Gen Zs in Kenya and Tanzania came to protest non-violently on the street and they were mowed down. Painfully, the international community, the supposedly moral world, the free world, looked on. And before long, they were pouring billions in Tanzania, like they do in Uganda and other countries. Therefore, what other strategy? There's what is ideal and there's what is real. The ideal is non-violence. The real is violence. However, I'm persuaded that the ideal can actually be real. Non-violence can work. How does it work? These dictators would not be able to mow people down if they did not have a wind beneath their wings. For example, if America said you cannot kill people, those people will not be killed. Especially in countries that depend on America and Europe. Well, maybe in China, Iran and other countries, it can stand. And he was asking for my advice. Says, I come from China and this and that. What do you advise me? Because I'm an advocate for democracy, I'm an activist, defending human rights and democracy in China. But now I have to end up running to exile. What do you advise me? I'm like, what do I advise this guy? I honestly told him, bro, you have a big problem. Because for me, my dictator is funded by the West. And if I can either provoke the conscience of the West to stop funding them, I will be home and dry. But you, your oppressor is rich and does not need any funding from the US. So I don't know what to do for you. Same way, in Uganda, and by extension in Africa, if the international community said we are not going to relate with you when you're killing your own people, when you're murdering your own people, nonviolence will work. But for as long as the international community is complacent and is going to look the other side when people are being killed, then there's a big question on nonviolence. Unfortunately, they are the same that are very quick, very, very quick to sanction the people that are trying to free themselves by any means necessary. So that's the challenge. That's the more reason why we continuously come to the West and ask them to evoke the moral tools that they have, the targeted sanctions against gross human rights violators. Recently, I saw them sanction the former president of Congo. But there is a sitting president in Uganda and a military commander that commits this crime in real time and is not shy, is not even pretending to hide them. Then why not sanction them? When we get that, the non-violence works. And maybe I'll say that once we free Uganda, it will not only be freedom for Uganda, but it will become a base for all other freedom fighters to base there and free their countries. We don't have so many countries as of now. That's why I want to give a base. And maybe when you free Belarus before we free Uganda, hopefully we can make it a base to free Uganda as well. Thank you.
Thank you. That's an excellent response, and I'll get to your question just there. But before I do, I want to just say, there's a really wonderful text that I encourage you all to read from the 16th century by this Frenchman called The Discourse on Voluntary Servitude. It was written almost 600 years ago, and he basically asked the question, how is it that millions of people can submit to one man? Which is, I think, the question that you've just been asked, right? And what he says is basically it takes 6 people in his inner circle who flatter him, who take care of his his most intimate needs. 60 people who go around and administer his decisions. These would be like the MPs, right?
Yeah.
600 people who then go around and basically do the work on the ground to make sure everyone obeys. These would be like your LCs, right? And then 6,000 other people who depend on those 666 people.
Yeah.
So people who take bribes, who are part of the system. But that's really all it takes to make a whole millions of people, an entire country of France, submit to one tyrant. And he already came up with that idea 600 years ago. So we know what it takes, and we also, I think, know what it takes to remove that. Anyway.
Hello, my name is JC. I'm originally from Cameroon and the Republic of Congo. Sorry.
You come from 2 countries. You said you come from Cameroon and the Republic
of Congo. I was raised in France.
Oh.
So the current subject that's been going around is violence, right? So how do you plan, and you're trying to become the leader of an institution, namely the state, which at its origin is basically the organization of mass exploitation, right? Every state that I know of today, there's no state that I can think of which wasn't born in violence, right? Its true fundamental purpose seems to be the appropriation of other people's labor, right? So how do you plan on educating the population about the true nature of the state from a sociological perspective, while also fighting, on the other hand, small, very organized groups, which happen to be militarized as well, and which are trying to maintain the status quo and the exploitation of mankind.
Please ask the question again.
Sorry. I'm trying to make it as easy as possible, but from my own observations, like what we call the states, whether that's the United States, Uganda, Cameroon, France, you name it, they have this one thing in common, which is violence.
Yeah.
Right? All of those states were created with extreme violence. You know, if you think about how the United States was born, right? Uganda is the same through the colonization of the British Empire. And it seems to me that the fundamental and true nature of the system is the organization of the political means. And I'm using the terms of the German economist, Franz Oppenheimer, who differentiated basically two ways of exchanging, right? The economic means, which is the voluntary exchange of goods and services, right? Let's say we want to exchange something, which would be very peaceful. And there's also the political means, what he calls the political means, which is the appropriation, the forcible appropriation of other people's labor, right? So you're trying to become the leader of that institution that we call the state, which purpose is the preservation of the status quo. Right, so you find yourself basically sitting between two chairs, where on the one hand, I wouldn't say you must serve the interests of what I would call the elites, and at the same time you have to serve the population, right? So how do you educate people about the true nature of the state? That it may not be what we believe it to be, right? That the institutions that constitute the state are, as a matter of fact, in place to perpetuate, imperialism, right? We see it in the United States with external wars, right? Which don't have any reason to be, other than the expropriation and the desire to make more money from more resources, right? So I know it's a bit complex, but how do you plan on educating the population about the true nature of the state?
How do I plan to educate?
Right.
Or how?
Knowing that this goes against let's say, I would say those elite groups, right, which goal is to appropriate more resources.
Well, I don't know if I get you right, but you seem to say that violence is there and is part of the state, right? And how do I intend to educate people about violence, to accept violence the way it is?
Not to accept violence, but to educate people about the fact that the state, as it is, may be not the institution that we believe it is, right? That its genesis is rooted in extreme violence, whether you talk about colonialism, right, which happened in very cruel ways, cutting hands in the Congo, and there are so many different examples. In the United States of America, where you bring millions of slaves from Africa, compromise the native populations that were here before the Europeans arrived, right? So the true nature of the state, like I'm saying, is rooted in violence, right? How do you educate people about maybe finding a solution which lies outside of the traditional solutions that the state would propose?
Thank you. If I get you right, first you seem to suggest that violence is part of us and is intertwined with the state, which I disagree with. What I believe in is, yes, violence is there, but it must be tamed. It must be tamed by the people and owned. There's no country that is more violent than America. But America, the violence is tamed. It is the people over the violence. And for that violence to happen, at least in my opinion, I could be wrong, and that violence is not supposed to be against the people, but the people are supposed to control it and decide. For example, one writer wrote that the role of the military is to protect their people. And if the army is to protect the people against their enemies or the enemies of the state. And if their army is against the people, then the people are the enemies of the state. So, in the case of Uganda, we want to tame that violence and be able to direct it where it benefits the people, namely against the enemies of the people, not against the people. And when we tame that, then the people will determine what kind of state they want, not what kind of state an individual wants. As of now, violence, we are subjugated by violence. We are not above it. We don't direct it against the enemies of Uganda because we are reduced to being the enemies of Uganda. It should be in control of the people. The police is violent, but that violence is supposed to be against crime, not to control the people and to control their thinking and to control their choices. So our ultimate goal in simple terms is to subjugate violence, is to subdue the guns, to make the guns subjects of the people and not the other way around. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'll take one last question. And then make sure.
Thank you. I was just going to ask, you had mentioned your sentiment about Belarus and a free Uganda. What would a free Uganda look like to you? And what would be the first policy you would implement as the president?
Thank you. For me, a free Uganda is where everyone is equal, regardless of tribe, status, gender, or economic status, where all Ugandans have the right to live to their full potential, where the wealth of the country serves for the benefit of everybody, where the rule of law prevails, where leaders are servants and the people are the true masters, where leaders govern in accordance to the law, but for the benefit of the people. And the first step to do is to re-empower the three arms of government, to have an independent judiciary, to have an independent legislature, and to make sure that they are able to check the executive. It's to make sure that the military does its noble duty of guarding our borders, and the police is there to protect people and their property and not to play politics. It's basically to free up people where citizens are not going to have to worry about offending those in power. That's the new Uganda that I envision. A Uganda where everybody from north to south, from east to west, can dream to become something and they'll be it. That's the Uganda I envision. Thank you.
I think that's an excellent note for us to end our discussion.
Thank you. Thank you to the both of you. This was something for all of us to return to, and that's my ask, and also the space that I think we all are here to see what it is that we can take from this and actually take action on, right? Many of us come to these conversations, these talks, and we're left feeling good, or maybe not, but nonetheless, it may fall flat. So my challenge to you is to think about ways in which to connect to your communities, to connect to your colleagues, to connect to other students, and actually enact what could actually change and move the barometer into places and spaces that which support the visions that you all have for the world, not just what we heard here today. And I asked you a question in the beginning, what is the cost of being a public voice. And that cost, where does it land in your body? I'm asking for you to live in that question as you even move into the next part of your day. Here in narrative medicine, in the space of deeply listening, asking those questions that really allow for us to deeply listen to the other, not just yourself, and also to be able to listen around the nuance of storytelling is the challenge I think we all have in this society right now, is to deeply listen to one another. And I want to say thank you to you both, and bottom line, thank you so much, Mr. President, for being here, okay?
Yeah.
And
I just want to say very quickly, thank you very much to our speakers and Bobi for being here today. And I also want to encourage all of you to stay in touch with what you're trying to do to bring people together under Africa House, to have these types of conversations. So please, if you're back next term, please join us, come meet with us in Mox Hall. We're just down here at the end of this hallway here. So come visit and yeah, be part of the community. So thank you all for coming.